there was a little hamlet not far from Hinton. And this is a beautiful little place. It's still there to this day. It's called Brule. And it was in its time in like, I don't know, like the 1920s or something, it had been a fairly substantial coal community. And they mined coal for the old railways, for the old steam engines. And of course, when the steam engines were replaced by the diesel locomotives, the community of Brule died, and their coal mine shut down. And I don't know what they were at their height. If there was 1,000 people there, that was probably a lot for the 1920s in Alberta. But nonetheless, by the time I grew up there, and in the 70s, Brule was a little hamlet, and I don't know, maybe there was 20 families, maybe, and I think it's grown a little bit since then, because it's become kind of a bedroom community of Hinton, and it is gorgeous. Like, it's nestled right at the foot of the mountains. Black Cat Mountain is there, this gorgeous mountain where the trees have grown in the shape of a cat. It's quite remarkable to see. But anyways, as a kid, Brule had this playground that was made by like the locals in Brule, right? And so they took, one of the locals who lived out there had worked in the bush, falling trees and stuff like that. And so he was really good with a chainsaw. And so he took like logs, these big logs, and he made Flintstone cars. Right? So he cut the logs and shaped them and hollowed out for kids to be able to sit in, like the Barney Rubble car, made like steering wheels and all of that, and the wheels and all of that. He was just such a good craftsman. I don't know the man's name. Maybe some of the people who grew up in Brule, would remember who it was. But in the 70s, yeah, he had made like these Flintstone cars from scratch out of logs. And then I don't know when, but at some point, in maybe the late 60s or early 70s, they ran electricity and like telephone lines out to Brule, and the big wire spools that the cables came on. Well, they left those behind, right? When they did the cut lines and all that. So members of the community kind of collected them up. And they brought them to the playground, and they kind of half sunk them into the ground and used like burlap sack and kind of some artistic skill and again some woodworking, and made them into like these, kind of like sea creature, Loch Ness monster kind of sea creature kind of toys. So this playground was kind of exciting as a kid to go to, because it was all homemade. Like the swings were all homemade. Excuse me. There was a big sandbox. The Flintstone cars, all of this kind of, Ogopogo sea monster toys to play on. So as a kid, going out to Brule was like, oh man, we get to go play at the playground in Brule, right? So my aunt had, I think, a family member that we used to go visit there sometimes. And so sometimes she'd come pick me up, and me and my cousins would go with her to Brule, and she'd visit with her family member, and we'd go to play in the playground. And I'd never forget what, a couple of times me and my cousins were so excited to be going to Brule to play in the playground, right? And we'd get to the playground, and we'd be, one time in particular, I remember, I don't know if we were playing there for maybe 10, 15 minutes. And one of the locals, the local guys coming out, says, oh, you kids, you can't be out here. There's bears. There's bears in the area. You can't be out here. You got to go inside. You shouldn't be outside. And so we had to go back and hang around my aunt's family member's place, because if we went to play at the playground, we were told we couldn't play at the playground, and we didn't see any bears. And goodness knows, I'm sure this young man was of good intent, and certainly, you don't want to be attacked by a bear, especially like I can't imagine I was any more than about 8 or 9 years old. And my cousins were each a couple of years younger than me, so we didn't really know much, and all that stuff. But yeah, so yeah, it was the greatest playground that we weren't allowed to play in, or we could only play there once in a while, right? But it was an interesting time. I really think that I benefited from that upbringing and growing up more rural, and having that kind of aspect to growing up, right?